Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of our Japanese Garden Escape. For those who are new to the channel, I'm Teresa, and this week we will be finishing our autumn leaf cleanup in the garden, and also I will show you what we do to care for the conifers like black pines and mugo pines we have in the garden before the winter comes. So over the last few weeks we have worked our way around the garden, and now we're in the last area that needs cleaning up. You can see behind me that mound here, and also on the pathway there are still all the leaves that need to be raked up or picked up. And this area, the reason I wanted to show you this area especially is because it's tricky because of the moss that grows underneath the leaves, and a lot of this moss is not fully attached yet to the ground. So this area takes always a bit longer, and I'll show you a few tips and tricks how to clean areas like that. Also, we have many ferns in this area here, and I'll show you how we clean them up for the winter. So with ferns, you see those kind of ferns, they are just a normal like forest ferns. They grow here naturally, they spread also quite a lot. And once they're completely dried off, like the ones here, I just, in autumn, I just grab everything and just cut it off. So that's really all I do. This is how I clean the entire area up where we have ferns. Sometimes, depending on how dry they are, you could also just give them a yank like this. This works, but usually you see that the root in there, you see that isn't attached so well that it doesn't move. And sometimes if they're smaller ferns, it happens when you do this, that they actually rip it out. So this is why I always use just shears. You can also use just normal household scissors to just cut these dried fern leaves off like so. So on mounds like those, I never pick everything completely clean. That's because a little bit of, needles and some little branches and twigs and one or the other leaf here and there provides some natural fertilizer actually. So this is why I just leave it. Another reason I never pick it completely clean is so that the new moss that may distribute from other areas through wind, for example, has something to attach on or to like stick on before it actually kind of grows onto the soil. So that's another reason. What I do, however, is broom the stones clean, because I do not like having needles or any debris on the stones we have. And I also use for this, like I use for the moss, is like a broom with a natural material, so like a straw broom or whatever you have, and clean off all the stones and rocks we have. Okay, that's it. Now onto the pathway. So the pathway, I just broom with this broom as well, and because there are most of the leaves still to go to be picked up, I'll just broom everything to that side here. Right, so that's that for the pathway. Now here regarding growing moss, what I do, I always try to preserve moss when we do any cleanups. So you see what happens through brooming, raking, or just sometimes also just picking up leaves by hand, is that you will pull pieces of moss with you. And this is normal because not all the moss is completely attached, or sometimes very loosely. And you see what I do for larger pieces, I actually pick them out of the pile before I put the pile in a bag. Now this is sometimes takes a little bit of time and patience, but for me it has always been worth it, because we really want to grow as much moss as possible. And if you imagine that all this moss that is raked up here would be thrown away, that would be kind of a shame and a waste. So that's why I go through quickly. I'm not bothered with pieces that are really too small, but at least larger one that I can just see, you see when going through like that, those I pick out. And then what I do in areas where I think there could be more moss, for example that little patch here, and then I just distribute it on these areas and push it down a bit. You can also step on it, this doesn't matter at all to the moss. So sometimes push it a bit into the soil so it stays there, some wheat, and that's it, and then I just leave it there to grow. So on areas like this mound here, you can see the moss is pretty much completely attached. That means in order to clean the leaves off, I either use a broom and do just a very light, careful stroke to get the leaves off. This is basically what I did coming from that end. This area here I can't really get in with the broom because of the maple here. So what I do here, and that's also the second option how to do it, is just basically pull the leaves back by hand with your fingers. And also here be very careful, so just grab them lightly. You see a piece of moss that came up with it, in order to avoid that. This obviously takes a lot more time, but it depends on how much attached the moss is and how much time you want to invest in doing that and preserving the moss. So I'll just keep going like that with the rest of this mound here, and then the bit back there, this is different again, and I'll show you what I do there, because in that area behind me the moss is really loose. So in this section here I will try to broom down the moss carefully from this mound, because the moss on the mound there is more attached, so brooming should be fine. Here however, this is an area where we took out the azaleas that didn't grow here because they were too shaded out, and a lot of moss is actually still pretty loose. So here I'm basically gonna just be lifting up the leaves carefully like so with my hands, and to make sure I do not remove too much moss. You see underneath here how much growth there already is, and next year this should be then easier to clean up. So you see how I'm brooming here. So I do just a very light stroke, and I try to move only the leaves really that are loose on the surface. You see here some leaves, they kind of attach or get stuck in the ground, and those I'm not trying to broom away with the broom really. Those are the ones I'm going to be picking out carefully by hand, and this is to protect as much moss as possible. Okay, so with this area we have broomed the leaves down to here, and now this is where I can't keep brooming. We also can't do any leaf blowing here, and so what I'm doing here now, I'll pick up these excess leaves first. Again, if I see any bigger parts of moss, I'll just pick them out quickly, like those here for example. Just put them to the side for now. And then underneath here, I'm very careful. You see here I'm, for example, ripping up moss that is on the loose, so I put that back right away. And here, even with my hands, I'm so careful not to take up any moss. See another piece I just took up here, like so. And what I do in this area, because this is a very sensitive area for moss, I will actually leave some of the leaves, like about this amount of leaves you can see here, because otherwise again it would cause too much damage to the moss, meaning too much moss being taken up, as opposed to just leaving the leaves and they'll be rotting away over the winter anyway, and the moss can just grow undisturbed. So this is what I will be doing in this entire area, and then we have a few more patches to go until we're done. It's now a few days after we've got surprised by the snowfall that you have seen last week, and you can see most of the snow has melted away. And now I want to show you how I take care of the black pines in autumn time. So I'm starting with this one here. This one is actually a mugo pine, and what I do, I make sure that all the dead needles are cleaned out. So on mugo pines, because they have relatively short needles, most of the needles fall through naturally to the ground. However, when you have a look inside, you can see that there are, especially on the lower branches, some needles, like here for example, you see they do get stuck on branches, and so that takes basically light away from the branches in there, and also it doesn't look very nice. You see also here there are branches stuck, needles stuck on the branches, and this is what I just clean out. Normally with these types of pines, like the mugo pines and also Scots pines, where they have really short needles, this goes really fast, so I like shake them a little bit and go through with my fingers a bit to clean them off. And this is what I do on all of them in like late autumn time, because this is typically when they start to drop their older needles. If I see any dead branches, I cut those as well. There are a few little ones here on this one, but I may clean them out in spring, because typically they may develop some more smaller dead branches over the winter. The next ones where it's more important are the black pines, and here we have our big black pine, and you can see here that all these needles, because they're a lot longer, so they come down, and then they usually, you see like on this branch, they get just stuck on the branches. Or here as well, you can see how many needles are stuck, which again takes away the light for these still green needles, and also for the branches here in general. And so for those, it's more important to clean them out. And here on the black pines, it's easy to see from which year the needles come. and I show you on this one here, for example. So that's the growth here from this year. So year 1 going back to this node, and then going back, this is from last year, and to this node here, and then going back to the next node. So this is from 3 years ago, and you see these needles, they're starting to fall off. The ones that are still green, I do leave them on. Typically in gardens in Japan, this would all be cleaned out completely, but for now I'm leaving those on there. So what I do, and I will start from the top there actually, see if I can reach, I'm gonna get the ladder, to just pull them down and then clean out the entire tree. So all these needles are gone and do not rest on any green branches still, like you see here. So this is just really to pull it out carefully, always in the direction like the needles are growing, so always that way, so outward, not the other way. And like that I clean off the entire tree. And this one now is a bigger tree, and the branches do have enough space in between them. But where it gets even more obvious, and I'll show you that on a small black pine, how much that congests the tree, so to say. You see down here also, you see it, all these dead needles on the branches, and especially on smaller black pines where there is not that much space in between branches. There it's very important to keep them clean. So the last needle is this one here, and you can see on the piles we have this one here, the one over there, and then another one back there, how many needles or dead needles there are actually on this tree. And so that looks a lot nicer and is a lot better for the tree. Okay, good. So I'll clean the needles up later. And the last one I want to show you is a smaller black pine, which is just right there. And especially when they only have this really small size, it's very important because you can see all the dead brown needles that are in there, and they really congest the tree, so this is not good leaving them. You see they hang on the other shoots, on the new shoots and green branches everywhere in there. And so here on those it's especially important, look in there, to clean them off, because they cannot just fall through because there's no space and the needles are too long to just fall through. So I'm gonna start on this one, the same cleaning out procedure. So I'll start from the top and just clean my way down the tree all the way to the bottom. So you can see the pile of needles coming from this small black pine is quite a lot again. So this is why it's really important to do that on a yearly basis. So I'm going to continue with this one. There's just that little bit down here left. And that's all for this video. Thanks very much for watching, guys, and see you next time. Bye!